I think if you set about just doing something that you really think is, your gut instinct is it's really great and you're really proud of it, and it's whatever art form it is, whether it's a sculpture or writing a song and everything, and you continue doing that and you love it, I think at one point other people are going to love it too. But that has a limitation as to how many people could love it, depending on how many people it can get exposed to. So then it comes a point in a creator's life where they go, it's okay sort of being in this one gallery or performing in this one bar, but how do I then get other people to hear it? And then they have to enter into the marketplace. Now art and commerce have got this very peculiar marriage. And what it is, the compromise is, it's such a bizarre thing to do with art. Art is all about not compromising and saying how you feel and what you feel. And commerce, 99% of the time, is about compromising. So that marriage has always been an awkward one. And to tell you the truth, most of the bands that refuse to compromise have been the most successful. Yet the record industry still haven't understood that thing, and they still want to get bands to compromise and tone down and dress this way and walk this way and kind of follow this sort of pattern that they've probably done a demographic study of what they think people want. But of course, people only want that because that's what they've been fed, and they haven't seen the new thing. And as soon as a new thing appears that is brilliant, they all want that too. So if you were to listen to what people in the position to try and make it compromise would tell you to do, you might end up being a very generic, another thing on the shelf that people could choose from, but you're not standing up or sticking up looking very unusual. And I think it's best to stick to your own vision, really.
Too many artists that I've run into over the years don't understand their business that they're in. While it is an artistic endeavor, it's also a business. It's called the music business. And I think they are ignoring that to a large degree. I'm not saying go over the top with it, but understand your business. Understand the business you're in. Understand what should I receive when I sell a record? What does it mean to sell a record? What does it mean? What does publishing mean? How do I earn my money? What is synchronization right? What is a performance right? How do I earn my money?
If you think about it from the song to the gig to the team, in essence, if you look at those things together, what you're doing is you're creating a business, right? If your songs are your assets, your gig is kind of your marketing, and your team becomes kind of your human capital, your staff, or whatever, well, you have a business now. So you have to think of this as a business, and thinking of it as a business means addressing specific concerns, everything from legal aspects, legal forms of ownership, from if you are a band, you might want to think about some kind of partnership agreement. You might want to think about an LLC. You might want. There are various ways to structure a band that can really help you over the long haul. But the main message, I think, is not to get bogged down in that stuff, but to genuinely think of it as a business, and that requires thinking entrepreneurial, and that's kind of a vague term. But what it means to me is being opportunistic with some strategy, so that you have what I call kind of core principles. You have a mission, right? And that can, you hear the word mission statement and it sounds kind of hokey or corporate or something, but you have something that defines you as a band, who you are, right, and what your values are. Again, returning to a band like Fugazi, very easy to see what their values are, but it can be something as simple as, well, we are a democracy and we want to never sell out, right? Well, that's very vague, but you can begin defining that. Well, what is selling out? Is selling out, it used to be selling out was having your music used in commercials, so clearly that ain't the case anymore. So, what is selling out? But having some values, and then having a vision. And essentially, your vision is how you're going to get to your mission. So if your mission is our mission is we're going to be a great band, and we get to do this exclusively. We don't have to work day jobs, right? That's our mission. So, well, what's the vision to get there? Well, vision implies a certain strategy, and so now we really are, as I suppose, distasteful as it is to some musicians to think about, we are thinking about it like a business. And what that means is having kind of measurable goals and actions. And too often bands don't do that. Their measurable goal is start band, become famous, right? And that's the gap in between start band and get famous is insurmountable, and it just won't happen. So there's all sorts of little steps in between them, and certainly we've talked about some of them in the sense of, you know, writing songs, getting those songs copyrighted, affiliated, whatever. That's a little gap between start band and get famous, or start band and be a self-sustaining musician, whatever that gap is. And then another gap is getting a manager, and what are the steps in there, and thinking strategically, and then really being able to measure your progress. Too often bands don't measure. They do the same thing year in and year out, and they can't really figure out, well, why aren't we going anywhere? Why are we spinning wheels? It's because they're repeating the same strategy that just isn't working that well for them over and over again. And thinking like a business, businesses are forced either through, if they're public companies, through their external shareholders or through their checkbooks to re-examine their strategies. If we're not making money, we have to figure out why and change it, or we're not a business anymore. And bands can kind of go on indefinitely that way because they subsidize it with their other money or whatever. And I would contend that will take a different, that will bankrupt you in a different way. It'll kind of bankrupt your soul, you know, because you begin feeling like, I'm not good at this, and it may not be the case at all. It just may be that your kind of business strategy isn't the right one. I'd like to say also that I don't see this kind of left brain, right brain thing when it comes to people can either be business people or artistic people. I think that some of the best business people in the world, certainly the best business people I know, have a real artistic sense about them. And if you think about it, one of the key elements of being an entrepreneur, being opportunistic, seeing opportunities, is being able to improvise, right? Something gets thrown at you and you have to shift a little bit, and well, that's music, right? So the band should be the people coming up with ideas, and the manager, who also should be coming up with ideas to a degree, but should really be kind of managing them and tracking the progress. How many people showed up at the last show, right? X. How many people showed up at the show after that? X plus or minus. Why is there variance? You know, you got to ask these questions, and then you got to figure out how to reduce the variance and keep it moving forward. And you know, I start using words like variance. I suppose I sound like a business person, but why do we have less people at our show this time than we did last time? You got to figure that out. If you don't, it's just going to keep going down and down. And certainly understanding the structures out there, understanding what it is you want. Part of being a good business person is being an informed business person, understanding what publishing is, understanding what your assets are. These songs are your assets, maybe your only assets. How are you going to maximize those assets? If you want to get signed to a record deal, do you understand the architecture of that record company? You know, how does it work? How do these pieces fit together? Management relationships. How do you figure out how to work within a management company? So all of these things are business elements that I think it's incumbent upon musicians to think about.
When people start out in a band, first of all, we don't know how long it's going to last. And second of all, you have a lot of things on your to-do list, like get a rehearsal space and gas money and, you know, right down the line. There's a lot of things on that list and usually very little money to pay for it. Somewhere on your list, and after some amount of time that you go, wow, this is working. This is working. I like this group of people. I think, you know, we're actually getting serious about this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to be a business. We're going to go for this. At that point, you should put on your list a couple things. You should put on your list, check out getting a trademark in our group name. And the second thing you should think about is entering into some type of arrangement, agreement between the band. How are we going to conduct our business between ourselves. We are not only musicians now. We're not only drinking buddies. We're not only all these other things we are. We are also business people now. We actually got a business, so we gotta sit down and decide what's fair, how we want to treat each other, and how we're going to split the money, and who's going to decide things. Does the lead singer always get to decide things, or does the drummer never get to decide things? How are we going to run our business? And so usually people refer to that as a band agreement. There are only certain things that have to be dealt with. How the money is going to be split, usually it's equally. That's not usually a big deal. In terms of songwriting, are people going to, say there's 1 or 2 songwriters in the group and there's 5 people, is there going to be any split of income? Are just the songwriters going to get songwriting income? Or do these other 3 also enjoy some fruits of those, of the songwriting income? The trademark, as I alluded to, becomes an important thing. And how can you get thrown out of the band? And if you do get thrown out of the band or quit the band, what are your rights? Okay, so those are things, and they're not horribly difficult things to deal with, quite frankly, although I did have a band break up during the band agreement negotiation, come to think of it. But it's really a good thing to do. And you can either have a corporation, a partnership, any of the entities, an LLC, any of the entities that you choose to do your business in, the questions are always the same. You're still going to have to decide these questions that I enumerated before.
The business plan generally will contain usually the following components. The business plan will generally contain a strategic plan, which has a list of goals, objectives, aim, mission, vision, and things of that nature, kind of the strategic posture of the band and where it's headed. It will also contain a marketing plan, which is what we've just discussed. It will also contain an HR plan. The HR plan is a human resource plan. You know, who are going to be the players in the group, and you know, it's another major decision that somebody has to make. Are the players owners of the band, or are the players just contract laborers? Because you're going to handle it very, very differently if the people that play in the band are just contract laborers, and then you got the superstar, the lead singer is the superstar, and they own the label, they own the name of the band and the copyright to the name of the band. So that sort of gets into there. Then you also have a legal plan that's contained in there. The legal plan basically dictates the corporate ownership of the band, will dictate what's called an operating agreement as to who owns what, you know, who will benefit from what. And then there's a finance plan, which is how you're going to get money, how you're going to go about getting that money, how you're going to distribute that money, who gets money first, who gets money second, and a list of those kinds of things. Who owns the assets? You know, in what way can those assets be liquidated? You know, what happens if the band breaks up? Is all sort of you know, contained in that. And so generally, and then a lot of people want to put at the end of the business plan sort of a pro forma income statement, a pro forma balance sheet that will sort of lay out how this is going to happen, when it's going to happen, what needs to happen in what sequence, what's the different amounts of money that are needed to make that function, and then and sort of a timeline for getting these sort of things done.
I took a risk. I knew how far I could go financially, and I knew that when I hit that wall, I'd have to stop. But I also, one thing that never ever was in my mind was failure. It was never even an option. I never thought, like, what if this doesn't happen? I never thought that, because if it becomes even an option, that means it could happen. And I never thought it to be an option. I was like, it's gonna happen, and you got it. And every day I woke up, it was just about making the business work. You know, it was forego a salary on my side. If it was about just building the business, which is what I did, pumping money back into the company to make sure that I could make payroll and I could keep hiring new employees, and go out and keep bringing in the new business. It's just about perseverance, and I think it's having the confidence that you can make it, and having, obviously, the first thing an entrepreneur needs to do, of course, is to find the business that makes sense. I'm talking about more philosophical stuff over here, but when it comes to real practical things, you need to find, is there a hole in the marketplace? Is there a service or a product that's not being filled? And I saw a hole in the marketplace when I was in the labels, and I took the opportunity to kind of go fill that hole and create, I thought, an industry that, or a service within the industry that I thought was necessary that didn't exist at the time. So look for that hole in the marketplace. What is it? And can you fill that hole? And do you have the qualities to fill that hole? Do you have the product to fill the hole? Do you have the ability to create a service that fills that hole? Once you have that, and you have the relationships and the perseverance to go out and create a business model behind it, just go for it. And then just never think that you can't do it. That's the key. I mean, because failure's not an option. If it is, then you're going to go back to working in, a 9-to-5 job in a corporate environment. And that's, entrepreneurship's not for a lot of people. You have to have the state of mind that, you don't know where your next buck's going to come from, but I'd never do anything but what I'm doing now, I loved my days working the corporate level, but that was more of a PhD program, and I felt that I graduated and it was time to just do it on my own. And I think you have to have that state of mind that it's a lifestyle. It's a long-term lifestyle. It's something that is in you, and hopefully you're not going to ever give it up if you get into it. And I won't.
But right now I want to talk about how to make money, okay? Because as much as we all went into this because we loved it, and that's absolutely the truth, you cannot just live that way. That's not enough. Learning music is not enough to make a living in the music business. You have to realize, now if learning music is enough, then fine, you don't need to know this. And you just want to play, and if people hire you, fine, and if people want to listen to you, fine, or you'll get a day job, But if you want to pay the mortgage, if you want to send your kids to school, okay, or even afford kids at all, you need to think of yourself as a tiny business, all right? Exactly that way. The same way as any business markets, so do you. The most important thing about it is identifying what you do and who pays for it. Okay, so you'll say, if you're going into the market, don't just go into a market and say, yeah, I'm a musician and I do these other things and so forth. Say what you do exactly. All right. Also, another thing, be prepared to say things like this. My name is Jim Ellis. I started a long time ago working for Mary Tyler Moore. I did music for WKRP in Cincinnati, Buffalo Bill with Dabney Coleman. I did National Diet Coca-Cola ads for years. I've had 2 songs played in the Olympic Games, 4 shows on the Discovery Channel. Be prepared to say things like that. Be prepared to say exactly who you are in the minimum amount of time, in some sort of professional way. Okay? Don't look like you just woke up either, if that's possible. But what you want to do is say, all right, if I'm a player, who hires players? And so you identify contractors and you identify bands. You look in the thing and look for where the people with the money is. You don't just appear. You go and introduce yourself to people. And there's a story that goes along with this. It's I'll think of his name, Peter Stroud. Have you ever seen, it's a story I called, And So They Hired Peter, okay? And have you ever seen Sheryl Crow? Okay, as you're viewing Sheryl Crow, to her right is a tall, thin guy with long blonde hair who plays guitar and who plays all the slide things and who's her lead player. That's Peter Stroud, okay? He's from here. Now, about 20 years ago, okay, Peter was my guy. He would come in and play, and he was from here, and he was just starting out, and he was killer, and still is killer, but, And one day he came in and said, and he would go out with opening bands, and, and he was a good traveler, and he could do all that, he could play. And so he came in and said, I'm moving to Los Angeles. And I said, well, do you have, you know, who you're playing with? And he said, I don't know. And I said, are you kidding me? He said, no, but I met the people with Sheryl Crow, and I'm going to go hang out with them. Okay? And so they helped him get work and so forth and so on. And when the job of guitar player opened up, did they have auditions? Sheryl Crow could have anybody in America play guitar for her. Anybody. Okay? And all the money in the world, whatever, she could have anybody. But they gave the job to Peter, of course, because there he was. And he was qualified to do the job. So being qualified, like I said before, hugely important. But being there and having them know your name, they can't hire you if they don't know you, and it doesn't matter how good you are if they don't know you. So identify your market.